Trigger warning, angst. Chapter 18. Would you, Atsumu wakes up to the sound of Kayumi's heartbeat. It's strong, slow, in rhythm with his own. Strong arms are wrapped around him, his face pressed against the soft skin and yet hard contours of Kayumi's chest. Atsumu feels safe, feels secure, feels at home, at ease. For the first time in so long, Kayumi is warm. It feels good, nice. He doesn't want to leave. Atsumu would say it's a dream, but this time it feels so real. It is real. Kayumi is here. He doesn't know how much time passes as they lie wordlessly in each other's arms. Atsumu practically clings to Kayumi, unable to bring himself to let go of him ever again. Just the thought of having to part ways makes him sick to his stomach. The way Kayumi holds him so tightly makes Atsumu hope that he must feel the same way. He may be foolish to hope that Kayumi feels even the slightest bit like him. Nevertheless, he refuses to give up this illusion. For now, he wants to hold on to it. Kayumi saved him, took care of him, showed him more affection than ever before. Atsumu closes his eyes and thinks of last night. Thinks of every touch and every kiss that brought him back to life. Soft lips on his skin, entwined hands begging to stay. It was never so tender between them, so intimate, so vulnerable. Why can't Atsumu shake off the feeling that this is a final goodbye, once and for all, erased from his life? It was too good to be true. They were never meant to be together in the first place. We should get up, Kayumi murmurs, and oh, just hearing his voice makes Atsumu's heart ache. It bleeds even though the one he longs for is lying in his arms. His body trembles with fear of what awaits him. Atsumu knows that this doesn't make sense between them, that it never has to begin with, but his mind and heart are at war and no outcome can satisfy the desires of either of them. Atsumu has already lost a part of his soul. If Kayumi leaves him here and now once and for all, it will probably shatter completely. He wishes he could stop time. Yeah, he rasps, but neither of them moves. Eventually, they get up. Kayumi rose with quiet efficiency to fetch supplies to treat Atsumu's wounds while Atsumu's attention drifted to the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room, capturing a breathtaking view of the world beyond. The first snowflakes gently descend from the sky, showing off the delicate dance of frozen crystals and painting the scene with serene nostalgia. It was Atsumu's mother who taught him the importance of the first snow, often symbolizing new beginnings and the transient beauty of life. He's captivated by the ethereal dance of soft flurries blanketing the familiar landscape in a pristine white. Can't help but feel a twinge of melancholy. The world outside is transformed, and a subtle shift in the atmosphere mirrors the unspoken changes within. Atsumu tears his gaze away when Kayumi returns, leaning against the back of the couch and letting his eyes roam over the man he never wants to let go. The world out there can be as fascinating and beautiful as it is, yet it is nothing without Kayumi. He wraps a black jacket around Atsumu's shoulders. The subtle hints of neon green in the fabric are reference to his time in Tachiyama. Atsumu is engulfed by Kayumi's scent. The warmth that lulls him counteracts the tremors in his body. His eyes are wide open, their gaze is locked. Atsumu's heart beats hard. Heat creeps into his cheeks. Kayumi sets to work treating Atsumu's wounds, and the routine reminds him of the previous night, triggering a deja vu that reverberates through Atsumu's being. His gaze lingers on Kayumi's form, committing every detail to memory as if trying to etch this moment permanently into his mind. Is this their last time? Will he ever see him again? Thinking about it hurts. With each touch, Atsumu's heartbeat quickens. Kayumi focuses on wrapping a fresh bandage around Atsumu's arm while silence entangles like a veil around them and lingers until Atsumu finds the courage to break it. He's still shaking, only slightly, not from the cold. How long? He frowns. How long have I been out? Kayumi's eyes, the steady gaze that's been Atsumu's anchor through all this time, meet his molten gold. They are the vastness in which he's never felt lonely, a sanctuary that now holds the weight of both relief and uncertainty. Atsumu can't help but lose himself in the depths of Kayumi's eyes, finding solace, a place he never wants to leave. Almost a week, Kayumi answers, the words hanging in the air with a heaviness that settles over Atsumu like a shroud. A week. Osamu is going to kill him. Kayumi's frown deepens, and he swallows thickly, a gesture that suggests he recalls something he'd rather repress. The unspoken words linger, creating a void that Atsumu hesitates to breach. It takes Kayumi a while to share the next words. His gaze is fixed on Atsumu's wounds, avoiding his eyes. You've lost a lot of blood. Atsumu's mind races back to the chaotic encounter with Tendo and Terashima, the clang of metal, the searing pain in his thigh inflicted by Tendo's knife. The memory blurs beyond that point, lost in the haze of his weakening body fighting to stay conscious. Someone had picked him up, not with violent intent, but with a gentleness that contradicted the battlefield around them. Atsumu remembers the touch, the warmth, smearing his own blood across the stranger's cheek. It was you. Atsumu breathes, the realization punching the air out of his lungs. Kayumi's silent confirmation hangs in the air. Atsumu's eyebrows are pinched together. Why did you save me? And it seems as if even Kayumi himself can't answer this question, because deep down they both know that sooner or later one of them will die at the hands of the other. So why didn't he just let Tendo and Terashima do the work? Why bother to step in? Atsumu's frown deepens. Why are you even here? It doesn't add up. It's a question that cuts through the silence, demanding an answer neither of them may be ready to provide. Kayumi scoffs at the question, a response that falls short of a genuine explanation. The seconds stretch out as Kayumi seems to contemplate, his gaze fixed on the wounds as if searching for words within the crimson stains. Shouldn't I ask you that? He breaks the silence, redirecting the query with a hint of irony. Kayumi's eyes lift from Atsumu's injuries to meet his gaze with a piercing intensity. Why are you in Tokyo? He presses, the frown etched on his face revealing a mix of concern and frustration. Atsumu meets his gaze directly and offers an answer that seems to invite skepticism. I had my reasons, he replies. Kayumi raises a brow, his tone carrying a subtle hint of mockery. Oh, really? I had to confront Terashima. Kayumi scowls. You didn't even have a plan, he accuses, the concern for Atsumu's well-being piercing through the veneer of exasperation. His frustration surfaces, irritation evident in the sharpness of his words. Atsumu mirrors Kayumi's expression, defiant and unapologetic. I don't need a plan, because he never did. Yeah, right. Kayumi scoffs again. Especially not when you're going to a city where people are dying to kill you, he retorts, the words laced with raw honesty. Atsumu's nonchalant admission only seems to intensify Kayumi's frustration. I hadn't thought of that, Atsumu replies, a casual acknowledgement that falls flat in the face of Kayumi's growing agitation. The room brims with unspoken tension until Kayumi's restraint snaps, and his words cut through the air. Yeah, he growls still, holding back his emotions. His gaze is back on Atsumu's arm in his hands. Focusing on applying the ointment to the small cuts is easier than looking Atsumu in the eye, because thinking has never been your forte. The fuck's that supposed to mean? Oh. And Atsumu has had enough of these games. And so does Kayumi. You seriously don't realize the dangers you're putting yourself in, do you? His gaze snaps up and Atsumu feels chills run down his spine. Kayumi's eyes resemble glowing coals. You may not give a shit about what happens to you, but there are a lot of people who do care, Atsumu. So, stop acting like a selfish dick and think about them the next time you want to plunge to your death. Atsumu's frown deepens. All he can do is scowl. What? He bites because what the fuck? Are you trying to make me believe that you give two shits about Sammy or Rin? Newsflash. Omi. They're none of your fucking business. This is not about them. Then what the hell is this about? Kayumi glares daggers at him. He balls his hands into fists and clenches his jaw. There is a vein throbbing furiously, exposing just a fraction of all the anger and frustration Kayumi is carrying inside. Atsumu presses on. What the hell does it matter what happens to me? If I die, then so be it. That should work in your fucking favor, shouldn't it? Atsumu presses his index finger against Kayumi's chest. You're gonna have to get rid of me sooner or later if you wanna save your cousin. So, what the fuck do you even care? Kayumi scoffs. What do I care? He pauses, slapping Atsumu's finger away. His tone drips with anger. He's livid. I keep seeing you. Kayumi begins, his voice cutting through the air like a sharpened blade. He pauses as if grappling with the words before adding, I keep seeing you everywhere I look. In the mirror, in my car, in my bed. I see you even when I close my eyes, and it fucking hurts. Atsumu. Atsumu blinks. Once, twice, 3 times. He frowns. He gulps. The weight of Kayumi's confession hangs in the air, a revelation that leaves Atsumu momentarily stunned. The anger, the frustration, it all fades away, replaced by the raw vulnerability in Kayumi's words. They lock eyes, and it's only now that Atsumu fully comprehends the depth of Kayumi's inner struggle. He lets the words sink in, the weight of Kayumi's feelings settling heavily on his shoulders. Did Kayumi go through the same pain as he did? Has he been thinking about Atsumu all this time? The questions swell in Atsumu's mind, a torrent of uncertainty that threatens to drown him. It hurts because I thought I could trust you, Kayumi continues, his voice strained with the bitterness of disappointment. Because I thought you might be the only one who truly gets me. Only to realize that none of this was ever serious to begin with. Atsumu's heart slumps, the weight of Kayumi's pain settling into his own chest. All his anger and frustration have vanished into thin air, replaced by a deep sadness. Seeing Kayumi like this leaves a terrible feeling, a pang of regret that echoes through Atsumu's being. That's not true, Atsumu whispers, because if there was one thing he was honest about all this time, it was his feelings for Kayumi. But that's how it felt. Kayumi answers, and the vulnerability in his eyes pierces through Atsumu's defenses. It's a gut-wrenching realization that he has hurt someone he cares about more than he let on. It breaks Atsumu's heart to see what he has done, what he can't fix. He never wanted to hurt Kayumi. Never. The room is silent and Atsumu is left grappling with the consequences of his actions. He scowls at a speck of dust floating in the air while mentally cursing their fate. It's not fair. None of it is. His eyes sting. I should have killed you when I had the chance to. Kayumi whispers, breaking the silence, his gaze piercing through Atsumu as if there's more behind those words. I should have killed you before I fell for you. You still can. Atsumu murmurs. A lump forms in his throat. No. Kayumi replies, and it's barely a whisper. He cups Atsumu's cheek, his touch a mixture of tenderness and regret. Atsumu closes his eyes, snuggling into Kayumi's palm, seeking solace in the warmth that lingers there. He frowns. No, you know that I can't. Kayumi responds, his voice a quiet admission of the complex web that binds them, the past, the present, and the uncertain future. It hurts. Atsumu rises from where he is leaning against the couch and Kayumi takes a step forward, closing the distance between them, and wraps his arms around Atsumu. It's a tentative embrace, a fragile connection that transcends the unspoken words hanging between them. Despite the weight of his injuries and the pain in his heart, Atsumu immediately returns the embrace, wrapping his own arms around Kayumi. Kayumi kisses Atsumu's temple, a gentle gesture that carries the weight of an apology and forgiveness. Then, without a word, he presses Atsumu even closer to his body, as if trying to meld their broken pieces into something whole. Atsumu is shivering, whether from the cold air or the overwhelming emotions. He can't tell. Yet, in Kayumi's embrace, he finds a fleeting moment of peace. The silent understanding between them becomes a bridge over the troubled waters of their shared past. I love you, Kayumi. I love you so damn much that it hurts. A tear creeps down Atsumu's cheek. He buries his face in the crook of Kayumi's neck. Will this ever stop? Motoya woke up. Kayumi confesses, and Atsumu freezes. It happened shortly after you saved your brother, he continues, his voice measured. It's as if Komori had sensed that Kayumi needed someone when he was about to be left alone. As if he had sensed that Kayumi might break if he lost everyone who mattered to him. Now he has at least a part of his family back. The implications of Motoya's awakening ripple through Atsumu's thoughts. That's good, Atsumu whispers, his frown deepening. I'm glad. Relief washes over him at the knowledge that Kayumi wasn't alone during their time apart. Yet, in the quiet recesses of his mind, a question lingers, unspoken and haunting. What does Motoya's awakening mean for them? Now that he's back, Ashijima will undoubtedly exert pressure on Atsumu, demanding the long-anticipated act, killing Motoya, or face dire consequences. Consequences that will surely affect not only Atsumu but also his brother and perhaps even Kayumi himself. Atsumu must grapple with the impending choices he will be forced to make. Is there any way to prevent the inevitable clash? The answer is simple. Right, there isn't. Hey, Kayumi says, releasing their embrace. He cups Atsumu's cheeks, brushing his thumbs over Atsumu's skin to catch his tears. Atsumu can't bring himself to meet Kayumi's eyes, staring at a spot between them, lost in the chaos of his thoughts. Look at me, Kayumi urges gently, and when Atsumu finally glances up, something inside him twists. Kayumi's eyes are red, blank, mirroring the pain that both of them carry. Atsumu isn't the only one trembling here. Kayumi leans his forehead against Atsumu's, their breaths mingling in the small space between them. He runs his thumb over Atsumu's lips, his gaze fixed on them, and Atsumu finds himself lost in the intensity of the moment. Fear and uncertainty hang in the air, but when Kayumi speaks, there's a note of reassurance that Atsumu struggles to comprehend. It's going to be okay, Kayumi assures him, but the ambiguity of those words leaves Atsumu with a gnawing sense of unease. The storm is approaching, and in its shadow, Atsumu wonders if okay are places they can truly reach. Atsumu closes his eyes, deepening the frown etched on his face. Silent tears continue to spill over his cheeks, a manifestation of the helplessness he feels. This situation is unbearable, and Atsumu wonders what he did in his past life to deserve this. Maybe Osamu was right all along. Maybe he's always been such a pain in the ass, annoying the shit out of everyone, so this is just a crumb of what karma actually pays him back. How's it gonna be okay if I'm doomed to take what's important to you? Atsumu asks, his voice laced with desperation. You are important to me, Kayumi replies, the words carrying a weight that both reassures and pains Atsumu. He opens his eyes, meeting Kayumi's gaze, and the hurt in his expression is going to kill him. Kayumi. Atsumu begins achingly, but Kayumi beats him to it. I won't let it come to that, he assures, his tone carrying a resolve that Atsumu finds both comforting and disconcerting. He breaks away from the embrace, looking skeptically into Kayumi's eyes. The contract's on. You know exactly what that means. It's your head or mine. There's no way out of this, Omi, Atsumu states, a harsh reality that they sooner than later need to face. Kyumi remains calm, almost agonized, as if bearing the weight of their inevitable fate all on his own. There's a sinking feeling in Atsumu's gut, a growing realization that their feelings may be caught in the crossfire of this merciless world. He doesn't like it. Whatever this is, Atsumu doesn't like it. There's always a way to cancel a contract, Kyumi says, his voice carrying a hint of desperation. Atsumu frowns, confused by Kyumi's apparent naivety. Not in our world, Atsumu begins, his tone filled with frustration and sadness. He doesn't understand why he needs to explain this to Kyumi. As a former assassin of Itachi and now part of Iko's Yakuza, Kyumi should know that the world they inhabit rarely offers mercy or escape. Unless, no. Atsumu's eyes are wide open. Forget it. Not a chance. Atsumu, Kyumi says, trying to calm him down. His voice is soft, but Atsumu breaks away from him, shaking his head. He takes a few steps back, staring at Kyumi in horror. That's not an option, he insists, the defiance in his voice cutting through the heavy air. Kyumi looks at him almost pleadingly. It's our only chance, he explains, his tone carrying a desperate urgency, but Atsumu snaps, his fear and frustration simmering in his words. It's exactly what he wants. Atsumu turns away from Kyumi, running a hand through his hair. His heart races, but not in a good way. Panic sets in, fueled by the realization that Kyumi can't possibly be serious. Can he? Don't go back to him, Atsumu mumbles quietly, a plea that carries the weight of his fear. Kyumi frowns. The complexity of the situation is etched on his face. This whole mess started because he wants me on his team. If that's the only way I can keep you and Motoya alive, then it's the least I can do, he explains, his voice tinged with resignation. Atsumu turns to him, his eyes red and silent tears slipping down his face, not out of sadness, this time, but out of sheer anger and frustration. It is unfair. It's unfair that Atsumu can't control this. It's unfair that this entire fucking universe is apparently against them. It's unfair that Kyumi has to sacrifice himself. Atsumu doesn't want that. It's completely fucked up. And what about you? Atsumu asks desperately, his voice breaking. What about me? Kyumi asks back, his brow furrowed. A Shijima treats you like shit. Omi, he messes with you, manipulates you. Fuck, he makes you leave everything that's important to you behind just so he can own you. And then what? Atsumu's words spill out, fueled by sheer frustration. What if you become a pawn in his game? I can't lose you like that, Omi. I can't. Then you can't disobey his orders? Who's to say he'll even cancel the contract? Who's to say he won't even have you kill Motoya? Maybe even kill me? Kyumi clenches his jaw and avoids Atsumu's gaze. It's probably nothing he hasn't already thought about. He won't, Kyumi says calmly. I will set conditions and he will hear me out. He respects me, so we'll find a solution that works for both of us. Atsumu scoffs desperately. That's total bullshit, Omi. It's our only chance to keep everyone alive. It's stupid. Atsumu snaps, hurt written all over his face. It takes Kyumi a moment to look into Atsumu's eyes. He swallows hard and walks towards the assassin, but Atsumu takes a step back until he hits a wall. Their eyes meet, and Atsumu feels empty, lost, defeated. Kyumi seems too determined. Atsumu doubts that he can change his mind. He invades Atsumu's personal space, and all Atsumu can do is stare up at the shimmering galaxy in Kyumi's eyes, silent tears creeping down Atsumu's face. Kyumi cups his cheeks and soothingly brushes them from his skin. Atsumu closes his eyes, the proximity suddenly hurting all the more. It's not worth it, Omi. I can't bear to see you throw yourself into that hell for our sake, Atsumu whispers, his voice breaking under the weight of his emotions. There's no other way, Atsumu. I have to do this. And a part of Atsumu knows that he is right, but fuck, this can't possibly be the only way. Atsumu opens his eyes, his eyebrows knitted together as he looks at Kyumi in pain. You once asked me what I wanted from you. He begins, his voice a fragile confession of his deepest desires. He pauses for a moment, pressing his trembling lips together. Then, he looks away from Kyumi briefly to catch his breath before returning to meet his gaze. I want this, here, with you. I wanna be with you when you wake up, and I wanna be with you when you go to bed. I wanna be a part of your life. I wanna be there for you, and I want you to trust me as much as I trust you. I want you, Kyumi. I want you so much that it sometimes really fucking hurts, Atsumu confesses, baring his soul to the one person who matters the most. Kyumi rests his palm on the wall behind Atsumu and frowns. He leans in and nudges their noses together, the sensation making Atsumu shiver. You don't always get what you want. His voice is soft, hurt. Atsumu's heart clenches and pounds so loudly and strongly that his mind goes mad. He closes his eyes to calm himself and speaks softly, giving in to the overpowering emotions. I love you, Kyumi. And Kyumi brushes their lips together, his voice coming in a whisper. It will pass. Dash. The sheets cling to their tangled limbs, evidence of the passion that had consumed them, a passion that Atsumu will never share with anyone else. A few hours have passed since Kyumi took him apart for the last time, and Atsumu can't find solace in sleep. Kyumi's embrace is tight, his arms wrapped securely around Atsumu as if shielding him from the haunting shadows of their inevitable future. In the silence of the room, Atsumu's mind can't help but replay every touch, every caress, as if trying to etch them into his memory. He thinks about Kayumi's soft lips trailing along his neck, the way his fingertips traced patterns on his skin, and the yearning in Kayumi's gaze that mirrored his own. A silent rustle disrupts the stillness and Atsumu's heart skips a beat. Kayumi's arms glide away from his body. He shifts to lay on his back. A sigh. Atsumu wonders if he's awake too, caught in the same loop of contemplation. Part of him wants to ask him to stay, but he knows better. It wouldn't make sense. Then, Kayumi moves. Subtle shifts in the mattress, followed by quiet footsteps. Atsumu's chest tightens, the weight of the impending loss almost crushing him, making it hard for him to breathe. He listens to every near-silent rustle of Kayumi getting dressed. His eyes are still closed, avoiding the faint city light that seeps through the window, avoiding Kayumi. Atsumu wonders why he just leaves like that, why he doesn't mouth the words, why he doesn't wake Atsumu up to bid him farewell, to tell him that their time was nice. Then again, none of this is what Atsumu wants, and probably neither does Kayumi. He comes back and stands beside the bed for a moment, and it takes all Atsumu has not to hold his breath or tense. He doesn't want Kayumi to know he is awake, although he probably knows it anyway. Kayumi has always been able to see through him. Softly, he brushes his fingers along Atsumu's arm, and without a single word spoken, he slips out of the room. Atsumu stays still and silent until the door clicks, and Kayumi's footsteps start fading into the night. Then, he opens his eyes. Alone, Atsumu sits up in the bed where they've made love earlier. A weird feeling of emptiness washes over him. It hurts. With shaky fingers, he grabs his phone and swipes through his contacts until he finds the one he was looking for. His vision is blurry. Atsumu feels drained. "Hey Rin," he says once Suna has accepted his call. His voice is strained. "Pick me up, dash, dash." 2 feet come to a halt in front of Atsumu, and he reluctantly lifts his gaze to find Rin standing there, crouched against the wall of the apartment complex. Atsumu is wrapped in the same black jacket Kayumi had given him the night before. His hands are buried in his pockets, trying to make himself small, as if attempting to shrink away from the overwhelming ache in his chest. It feels like there's a gaping hole torn right through him. "Yo." Suna's voice breaks the tense silence, and Atsumu manages a faint smile. "S up," he replies, uncertainty lingering in his eyes. They stare at each other for a few beats until Atsumu tears his gaze away, fixating on something without really focusing, just to avoid meeting Rin's eyes. "Are you okay?" Rin asks despite Atsumu's obvious wounds, and Atsumu senses the concern etched on Suna's face. He's not talking about his injuries. Atsumu takes a deep breath and sighs. He's done pretending, so he shakes his head slightly. His voice is soft. "No," he admits. Suna frowns. "Do you wanna talk?" Atsumu keeps his head low, gaze averted, and shakes his head again. "No." "Okay," Suna replies and offers Atsumu his hand. After a few seconds of staring, Atsumu takes it and lets Rin pull him up. He yanks Atsumu straight into a tight embrace, and Atsumu tenses at first, but then immediately relaxes into Rin's strong body, burying his face into his shoulder. For some funny reason, his eyes sting. Before Atsumu realizes it, he grabs a handful of Rin's jacket, pulling him in tighter and burying his face in the crook of Rin's neck. He shivers from the overwhelming sensations of his emotions and from the cold, but Atsumu allows his best friend to comfort him. He feels empty. "It will pass. Let's get you home, dash, dash." The soft hues of dawn begin to paint the sky as Suna's rusty car moves through the quiet morning streets. Atsumu sits in the passenger seat, gazing out the window as the landscape around them slowly awakens. The first rays of sunlight pierce through the trees and bushes, casting a warm glow over the streets. Rin steals a glance at Atsumu, noticing the weariness etched into his face. He's been a quiet presence, offering support without pushing Atsumu to speak, and for a good while they truly just sit in silence, giving Atsumu the space that he needs. He only breaks the silence halfway through because 3 hours in which Atsumu hasn't made a sound is 2 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds too long. "You gonna be okay?" he asks, the concern in his voice a constant presence. Atsumu exhales heavily, avoiding Suna's gaze and still staring out of the window. He's unsure if okay is even a possibility at this point. The weight of the recent events presses down on him and threatens to suffocate any semblance of composure. "I don't know," he replies, his voice barely audible. Rin nods, understanding the inadequacy of words in such moments. He gestures to a very beat-up and worn-out travel thermos in the center console, the white outlined cyan hearts drawn on an obnoxious pink making Atsumu frown. "What the hell? Warm up. It might help," Rin says. Atsumu eyes it suspiciously, raising one eyebrow as his gaze moves from the thermos up to Rin. "That's one ugly mug," He blurts out because for real, it's super hideous. I'm glad you can see your reflection on it. Atsumu scoffs. Jerk. He reaches out to grab the mug and inhales the rising steam, feeling a tinge of nostalgia as the scent of sakura tea envelops his senses. It's a fragrance that carries memories of comfort, a reminder of his mother's thoughtful gestures to soothe her sons. Her touch has always been so comforting, and anything crafted by her hands became solace for the twins. Osamu upheld her traditions, his touch mirroring the same gentle embrace she once provided. It's just too bad that Rin has absolutely ruined the taste. Atsumu takes a sip and makes a face that doesn't go unnoticed by Rin. He steals a quick glance at Atsumu, raising a brow when he observes his expression. Good? He asks. Atsumu needs to strangle him. It tastes awful. Glad I could help. Rin grins, fucking smirks, and Atsumu can't help but huff out a laugh. He stares at the mug, cracks a smile, and shakes his head, chuckling even a little when he realizes that Suna's poor attempt to comfort him is actually fucking working. This is so stupid. Yet, thanks, Rin, Atsumu says, gratitude evident in his tired eyes. He realizes that mere words might not be enough to express the depth of what Rin has done for him, not just now but countless times before. The support he offers, the unspoken understanding, it's nothing short of incredible and by no means to be taken for granted. Atsumu claims that Suna is his best friend, besides Osamu, of course, but their bond goes beyond conventional definitions. Even though Suna didn't grow up with them, it feels like he's always been there, like he's seamlessly become an integral part of their lives. The twins didn't mind for a second when Kita announced that this supposedly lazy assassin from Haruichi would be living with them in Inarizaki. No. On the contrary, Suna has filled this void that no one else could ever understand. Don't mention it, Rin says nonchalantly, downplaying the significance of his actions, but Atsumu isn't ready to let it go with a simple thanks. His eyebrows are pinched together as he stares at the mug in his hands. The support Rin has given the twins in the past few weeks is by no means a matter of course. Not only was he there for Osamu when the idiot didn't even want to see him, no, as often as he has helped Atsumu out of trouble, he should have cut him out of his life long ago. Ciao. Goodbye. Adios. And now again, Atsumu doesn't understand what he and Osamu have done to deserve Rin. Honestly, seriously, thanks for everything. For saving me in Osaka. For picking me up from Tokyo. It's Atsumu. Rin stops his rambling, his tone firm. Don't mention it. He looks at him and catches one of his glances. Atsumu realizes that Rin has figured him out long before Atsumu himself has. It doesn't matter which words Atsumu tries to express, the meaning will always remain the same. He is grateful, and Rin knows that. The moment Atsumu called him in the middle of the night to ask him to pick him up, Rin must have already realized that no matter what happened, Atsumu was finally ready to talk about it and move on. He must have realized that Atsumu would stop bottling things up, that now he needs friends who will listen to him, who will be there for him, no matter what. A faint but genuine smile graces Atsumu's lips, the first one in a long time. Okay, he says softly. Rin smiles too. They continue to drive in silence, the soft hues of dawn now giving way to the full embrace of morning. The sakura tea has worked its magic, not only warming Atsumu physically but comforting him emotionally as well. The taste might be off, but the gesture, the effort, means more to him than Rin probably realizes. It feels good, just the two of them alone. At that moment everything else is pushed aside. They drive in silence, but Atsumu notices the way Rin keeps stealing glances in his direction. It doesn't take long before he actually breaks the silence again, side-eyeing Atsumu with a wariness that makes his heart slump. I think he feels the same way about you. Rin's words hang in the air, and although Atsumu knows who he's talking about, he clarifies. Sakusa. It feels like a stab in his heart. Atsumu scowls at the mug in his hand, presses his lips together, and tries to suppress the tremors in his body. He racked his brains, keeps thinking and maybe Kayumi was truly right. Maybe thinking was in fact never his forte. And yet he recalls a kiss that welcomes him, a kiss that lays bare his feelings, a kiss that tells him goodbye. The touch of Kayumi's lips still lingers on his skin, the tenderness he has given him wrenching his heart, tearing it apart. No one will be able to give him what Kayumi has given him. No one will understand what they feel for each other. Every single thought of him hurts, no matter what it is. Atsumu frowns and nods. I know. A mumbled admission follows. It just kinda makes it worse. Because in the end, even admitting their feelings doesn't help them. Suna hums. You're not alone, you know. He begins. I am here. Sam, you too. Atsumu's heart drops into the pit of his stomach. He feels a twinge of guilt deep within, knowing that there are pieces of himself he hasn't shared with Osamu. He shifts uncomfortably in his seat, the car's warmth offering little solace. He hates keeping secrets from his twin, and yet, the fear of revealing the truth gnaws at him. Everything inside Atsumu constricts at the thought of how Osamu might react to all of this. He won't like anything of this. Not at all. Did you tell him? Atsumu asks uncertainly. About me and Omi? Suna laughs humorlessly and tilts his head, leaning it against his fist, steering the car with his other hand. Atsumu stares at him with his eyes wide open, his stomach doing the worst kind of flips. To be honest, we didn't talk much. He frowns, his eyes fixed on the road. Atsumu mirrors his expression, keeping his gaze on his friend. But no, he doesn't know anything about it yet. He thinks something is going on between us, Atsumu says warily, and Rin hums in agreement. Shit. Atsumu then curses. This whole situation isn't making things any better. No. Rin agrees, popping the P. Atsumu slumps back into his seat, thumps his head back, and stares out of the window. All of this is a fucking mess. The way you're behaving, you couldn't play my cards any better. Terashima's words echo in Atsumu's mind. It makes sense, now that he thinks about it. Every move he makes seems to deepen Osamu's suspicions, and the truth remains shrouded in a veil of secrecy. Osamu already has the wrong idea about him and Suna. The fact that Suna was the one who was informed about Atsumu's absence only adds to the confusion. Atsumu's decision to ask Suna to pick him up instead of Osamu, driven by the fear of his brother's reaction, only complicates the situation. A heavy sigh escapes Atsumu's lips. Yeah, this sucks. Terashima's manipulations over these past 2 years have left a web of deception that seems almost impossible to untangle. It feels like a knot in Atsumu's chest that just can't be untied. How long will it take for him to repair the damage? Is it even possible? Fuck. What if it drives a wedge between him and Osamu? Will he end up losing his brother too? Terashima kept feeding him this idea. Atsumu explains wearily, but Suna's frown deepens. I'll clarify everything as soon as I am back home. Do you want me to stick around? No. Atsumu swallows, his voice a bit harsh. He continues somewhat softer. No. I need to sort it out with him alone. Silence settles over them again and Atsumu feels a pang of guilt on his brother's behalf that Rin has to go through all of this as well. Both of the twins are giving him a hard time right now, and Atsumu mentally promises to make up for it. I'll kick his ass and make him apologize to you. It's okay, Rin says. The circumstances are difficult. Samu didn't mean it like that. He really didn't. Atsumu clarifies. He thinks of his encounter with Terashima, of everything Osamu had to endure, of how he himself wouldn't have been as strong as his brother. You can't even begin to imagine what he went through, Rin. And he rarely sees it, the depth of Rin's wrath. But from the way he draws in a sharp breath and tightens his grip on the steering wheel, Atsumu knows he wants to see these men bleed as much as Atsumu does. They will get to that. Atsumu isn't done with them yet. Not until he gets his revenge. Do you think he'll be okay? Rin asks, ripping Atsumu out of his thoughts. His eyes flicker with concern. Atsumu shrugs, his gaze turning distant. The road stretches ahead, and the familiar sight of the landscape of Hyogo Prefecture offers both comfort and uncertainty. You know Samu, Atsumu says after a while, breaking the quiet. He can be stubborn. It's a Mia thing, mumbles Rin, attempting to bring a lightness to the heavy atmosphere. Stop being a dick. Takes one to know one. Atsumu flips him the middle finger, and Rin laughs, easing the tension momentarily. He's a jerk, but Atsumu wouldn't have had him any other way. In fact, Rin being an ass allows Atsumu to be an ass as well, and isn't that great? He settles back into the seat and sighs, a strange weariness settling over him. He thinks about his brother and is unsure how he will feel. Atsumu's eyes, however, carry a glimmer of hope because there is one thing they both must be aware of. He's gonna be alright, Atsumu says in the end, his gaze locking onto Rin's. He meets a smile that he hasn't seen for a long time and suddenly Atsumu no longer understands how the two of them could ever have doubts. He's gonna be okay, Atsumu repeats. His own smile is warm. After all, he has you. Atsumu unlocks the door and steps into the apartment, the familiar scent of cooked rice lingering in the air. The warmth of home surrounds him, and he braces himself for the conversation that awaits him. Osamu is there, somewhere, and Atsumu knows it's time to face the consequences of his choices. He slips out of his sneakers and shrugs off Kayumi's jacket, setting Benihime aside and shuffling through the hallway. The dull ache in his thigh and rips a constant reminder of the recent events. The living room comes into view, and there, at the kitchen counter, Osamu is focused on a pot of simmering broth. Atsumu takes a deep breath and limps closer. The rhythmic clatter of Osamu chopping ingredients stops for a moment when he senses Atsumu's presence. Osamu glances over his shoulder, and their eyes lock. There's a brief flicker of concern in Osamu's gaze before he returns to his task. Atsumu gulps. Aren't you gonna ask me what happened? Atsumu could see his brother's pupils dilate, even if it was only for a split second. He could see every muscle in his body tense the moment he perceived Atsumu's physical condition, and he could see that spark of anger flicker inside him, which Osamu suppressed and didn't want to give the chance to flare up. But maybe that's exactly what he needs to get out now. Maybe he has every right to be angry with Atsumu, just as Atsumu has every right to be sad. Why? Osamu replies, his tone calm but lacing a hint of mockery. "It's not like you're planning to tell me anyway." Atsumu's stomach churns. Right. He got himself into this mess. Atsumu takes another step forward, wincing slightly from the pain. If he doesn't fix this between them now, he will never be able to fix it. "Samu, we need to talk." Osamu pauses, knife midair, and turns to face his twin. He has already pushed his brother way too far away. If he doesn't explain his behavior to him now, Osamu will never be able to understand him. The room falls into a heavy silence as Atsumu meets Osamu's gaze. His expression remains unreadable, a mixture of concern and frustration etched across his features. It takes a while for Osamu to put down the knife and take a deep breath. "Yeah, we do," he admits, his eyes never leaving Atsumu's. Atsumu leans against the counter next to him and waits until Osamu has added all the ingredients to the broth. He cleans the cutting board and knife, turns around when he is done, and dries his hands. Then he puts the kitchen towel aside and crosses his arms in front of his chest, his cool blue-grayish eyes locking with Atsumu's honey gold. Shivers run down Atsumu's spine. Was it again a personal matter? Osamu eyes him, his mouth twisted in anger. "Something you had to do for yourself. This time, it doesn't feel like a stab, but more like a punch right to his gut." Atsumu holds Osamu's gaze for a moment, feeling the weight of his brother's scrutiny. His gaze drops as he contemplates how to unravel the tangled mess of his recent actions. Atsumu takes a deep breath, his fingers tapping nervously against the counter. "You're not gonna like what I'm about to tell you." Osamu scoffs and it forces Atsumu to blink up. There's fury in Osamu's eyes. Fury. And something else. "I would have taken you to mom's ashes if I knew we could pull ourselves together, but I think this is about to make you so mad you won't even be able to hold back in front of her." Atsumu confesses, a mix of guilt and desperation in his voice. He laughs humorlessly, the sound echoing through the room. There's a plea in his eyes as his gaze locks with Osamu's, a revelation that not even their deal, that no matter how big their fight, they would never argue in front of their mother's dead body, would be broken. Osamu's expression remains stoic, a furrow forming on his brow as skepticism creeps over his features. Atsumu swallows. His throat feels dry, feels too tight with the words he needs to say. "Promise me you'll let me finish. You can accuse me of anything you want. Really, Samu, I'll take it all, but you have to promise to let me finish," he requests, the plea now audible in his voice. "Otherwise, my courage will fail me." Atsumu thinks, and in the silence that follows, Atsumu's mind echoes with the weight of his own worries. Osamu's frown deepens, but he nods, sensing the fear in his twin's eyes. "What are you hiding from me?" Osamu finally asks, cutting through the thick tension with a direct question that clears the path for Atsumu to speak. He tears his gaze off and takes a deep breath, nodding as he musters up the courage to tell Osamu the truth. His heart is pounding, beating so hard and fast that it hurts. Atsumu feels sick, nauseous even. He's so scared of his brother's reaction. He thinks this might tear him apart, but he needs to tell him what's up. He just doesn't know where to begin. "You can start by telling me where you've been and what happened to you," Osamu suggests, because of course he sees through his twin like no one else. "I've never seen you so battered." A wry smile tugs at Atsumu's lips because, to be fair, he has never been so close to death twice in such a short amount of time. Okay, to be honest, he's never been this close to death in general except maybe on their last big mission together, taking Kayumi's hit. Atsumu takes a deep breath and shifts his attention to a speck of dust swirling in the air. "I went to Tokyo," Atsumu confesses. He frowns and swallows, forcing his gaze back to meet steely blue eyes. "I wanted to confront Terashima and Tendo." Osamu's face pales. There's some anger and concern flickering across his features, this kind of dissatisfaction that Atsumu isn't sure he'll ever understand. Osamu swallows thickly, uncrossing his arms as the gravity of Atsumu's revelation sinks in. He observes the subtle tightening of Osamu's features at the mere mention of Terashima. He wonders if it's the haunting memories of Osamu's captivity resurfacing, or if there's something else beneath the surface. Osamu averts his eyes, a flash of pain crossing his face as he grits his teeth, jaw visibly tightening in response to the flood of emotions stirred by that name. "I thought I told you to leave him alone," Osamu mumbles, a sharp edge to his words. "You can't ask me to do that," Atsumu counters, his voice firm. "Not after everything he did to you." "Atsumu, no." He cuts his brother off. "You promised to listen to me. After that, you can throw whatever you want at me, but you have to listen to me first." Their gazes lock and Atsumu can see the storm of emotions raging within Osamu. Frustration, anger, worry, a complex dance that mirrors the turmoil in Atsumu's own heart. He can only guess what Osamu is feeling. With all the context Terashima has given him, he can only assume why his brother is reacting so sensitively. Eventually, Osamu gives in and nods reluctantly. quietly. Alright, he says quietly. Go on. Atsumu holds his gaze and makes sure that his brother is listening to him and not being consumed by his own thoughts. When he regains his full attention, he mumbles a barely audible okay and continues. I can't tell you why I went there. Looking back, I realize how stupid that was. Not telling anyone where he was going after being saved from death by Rin shortly before was not his best idea. Then again, Atsumu generally hasn't had many good ideas lately. I think I wanted an explanation from Terashima himself. He begins. I think I wanted to know why he had that stupid picture of me and Rin. And I wanted to know what he did to you. Could have asked me. Osamu grumbles and Atsumu nods. Sighs. Yeah, I could have. But would you have told me? Because Atsumu isn't the only one who pulled away. Osamu revealed what happened to him. Yes, but there are things that even he kept from Atsumu. Whether to protect him or to protect himself. Atsumu has yet to find out. Osamu holds his gaze but doesn't respond. I'm sorry for what he did to you, Samu. Osamu looks away and crosses his arms again. I'm sorry I wasn't with you. Is it true? Osamu asks. Atsumu swallows thickly. What I saw in the photo. Osamu tries again. It feels like the ground is being pulled out from under Atsumu's feet when Osamu's shimmering eyes meet his own. His heart is pounding, tightening almost unbearably. Atsumu forces himself to hold his gaze. He feels as if he will lose his brother if he looks away now. I think it happened about a year after you disappeared. Atsumu frowns. I accused Rin of a lot of things he didn't deserve. Atsumu huffs out a laugh. Thinking back to their time without Osamu, I wasn't very nice to him. Samu made him responsible for your disappearance and shit, even though he's the last person to blame. Osamu swallows. The photo must have been taken the night before Rin and I parted ways. We were both frustrated because neither of us had any leads to you and, I don't know, I guess we hit rock bottom in our search for you. Atsumu takes a deep breath. Thought drowning our sorrows in alcohol would make us feel better. He scoffs and ultimately averts his eyes, snickering at his own shitty explanation. Then, he mumbles, not that it would have made anything better. So, then you thought what? Kissing him would make you feel good again? Atsumu's gaze snaps back up and catches Osamu's irritated expression. No, he says immediately, softly, far too quietly. Atsumu frantically shakes his head. We haven't kissed, Samu. Nothing ever happened between us. Why should I believe you? Because Atsumu cuts himself off. He blinks a few times and frowns. I have no reason to lie to you. I've kept you in the dark long enough and I've reached my limits in the last couple of days. So I have no reason to continue withholding the truth from you. It will upset you a lot, but hiding it from you will upset you even more. Osamu frowns and tilts his head. He doesn't quite understand what Atsumu is getting at, but he remains silent and listens to his brother. Rin and I, we both felt incredibly lonely that night. Atsumu forces down the lump in his throat. I honestly couldn't get through the day without you. I don't think I need to tell you how it felt to suddenly live without you because you must have felt the same way. Now Osamu turns his gaze away from his brother again and presses his lips into a thin line. No one knows what torment he had to endure, and Atsumu's feeling of loneliness was nothing compared to his brother's struggles. Besides, Osamu must have felt lonely too. He had no one by his side, while Atsumu had them all. Rin leaned in, thinking I was you. When I stopped him before anything could happen, Atsumu falls silent, realizing his brother's clenched fists. Osamu trembles, and so does Atsumu. His heart feels like it's tearing apart, and he wonders if Osamu feels the same way. Do you know what he said to me when I stopped him? Osamu catches Atsumu's gaze. Both of their eyes brimmed with unshed tears, each pair for a different reason. Then Atsumu confesses, it should have been me. It should have been me, Samu, not you. It's what Suna also told him when Atsumu came back to Inarizaki. It should have been Atsumu. He should have been the one who was kidnapped, not Osamu. It was exactly what Atsumu had been thinking all this time as well, but was too cowardly to admit to himself until Rin finally voiced it out. And he was right all along, wasn't he? Because if it had been Atsumu, would they be in this mess right now? I left him without saying another word. Atsumu is trembling. I've avoided Inarizaki since that day and swore I wouldn't return until I found you. And I couldn't even keep that promise. Atsumu has not only lost his brother, no, for far too long he thought he was losing his best friend too, because the situation with Rin was tense. Hell, it was awful. Rin was far too gentle with both of them when he had every reason to cut them both out of his life. Back then Atsumu and now Osamu, but he will always have sympathy for them, won't he? He only ever thought of you, Samu. The lump in Atsumu's throat gets bigger. This whole time, you were the only one on his mind. Osamu trembles, unable to look his brother in the eye. His voice is quiet as he mumbles, you looked so close when you saved me. Because after all, he was the only one who understood me. Atsumu looks at his brother and realizes with every wrinkle on his forehead that his gears are turning. He realizes from the wavering of Osamu's eyes that he now, finally, doubts Terashima's words and grants more weight to those of his brother. He can't do more than clear up and explain what happened. The misunderstanding with Suna was the biggest one, and Atsumu can only hope that his explanation will will slowly sort it out. Osamu grips the edge of the counter behind him and scowls at a spot in front of him. But why did you call him and not me? Osamu asks, his frown deepening. His gaze shifts back to his brother. Confusion is etched onto his face. Why was Rin the one picking you up from Tokyo and not me? Why did he know where you've been and what happened but not me? I don't get it. Atsumu, it doesn't make sense. Atsumu knows. For plenty of reasons. He starts. His voice steady but tinged with hesitation. Osamu's skeptical gaze locks onto him, causing Atsumu to take a deep breath. Osamu doesn't reply, only raising a brow curtly for Atsumu to continue. One reason was, I didn't want you to meet Terashima just yet. Atsumu admits, choosing his words carefully. He watches Osamu closely, trying to gauge his brother's reaction. Osamu's frown deepens, and Atsumu can sense the mixed feelings Osamu harbors towards Terashima. There's an unspoken history between them, and Atsumu doesn't dare to pry into it just yet. Another reason was because I was scared someone would mistake you for me. Atsumu adds, and Osamu's eyes narrow in confusion. See, I'm not exactly wanted in Tokyo right now. The hell are you talking about? Atsumu waves the question off momentarily, knowing it's a complicated matter. It's part of the final reason, he says, eyes avoiding direct contact with Osamu's. He takes a deep breath, readying himself to delve into the intricate web of his recent choices and actions. The truth is a double-edged sword, and he knows that laying bare the complexities of the past 2 years might be the only way to mend the rift between him and his brother. On the other hand, it could only make things worse. Atsumu sighs. His mind races, seeking a path through the tangled mess of emotions and revelations that lie ahead. Self-mockery bubbles within him, and a desperate laugh escapes his lips as he grapples with where to begin. Only now does he realize how much shit he has kept from Osamu. If you still don't believe me that nothing is going on between me and Rin, then you're about to do it now. Atsumu mumbles, his gaze fixated on some indistinct point in the room. He can sense Osamu's skeptical look, the knitted eyebrows, and the confusion stirring within him. I fell in love with someone I'm not supposed to fall in love with, Atsumu confesses, his frown deepening. He swallows hard. Then, he forces his gaze back to meet steel blue eyes. And it's not Tsunerin, really. He takes a deep breath and shifts his attention to a speck of dust swirling in the air, buying himself a moment before telling Osamu the truth. Atsumu presses his lips together, his frown deepening as he contemplates the feelings he's kept hidden for so long. Atsumu begins, his voice trailing off. He thinks of Kayumi's eyes, the dark onyx shimmering orbs that hold the reflection of Atsumu's entire world. He thinks of Kayumi's body, the moles scattered across his skin, his pale complexion, and the beautiful tattoo adorning him, making him even more gorgeous. All this time Kayumi was praising Atsumu, but wasn't it Kayumi who deserved the praise even more? Atsumu thinks he is the most beautiful man in this world, inside and out. Then, Atsumu thinks of Kayumi's touch, the soft caresses, lips pressing against lips, and skin melding into skin. He exhales shakily, remembering their last encounter and the heartbreaking realization that he might have lost Kayumi forever. Osamu tries softly, a hand gently grasping his shoulder. Fuck. Atsumu curses and lets himself slowly sink to the floor, his back pressed against the counter. He runs a hand through his hair, gripping the roots, feeling the weight of losing one half of his world and the fear of losing the other half as well by revealing everything to Osamu. Atsumu is on edge and fear threatens to swallow him whole. Atsumu scrubs his hands over his face and buries it inside his palms, his elbows propped on his bent knees. He senses Osamu crouching down, welcomes his warm touch on his shivering arm, but he can't bring himself to meet his brother's gaze. What happened? Osamu tries again, his voice laced with concern. Atsumu's throat is as dry as the desert and his eyes sting. His heart thrums in his ears, and he feels sick. He takes a few deep breaths to compose himself before forcing his hands away from his face. Then he meets worried blue eyes, and Atsumu thinks he might break. When I left in Arizaki, I went looking for you in Sendai. All that shit happened in Seijo, so I thought I'd rather find some clues there than in Hyogo. Osamu remains silent, attentive to his brother's words. I was always close to things that led me to you, but Atsumu thinks of every time Kayumi beat him to it, every time he actually wanted to kill him. Atsumu misses him. It wasn't easy, all alone. Osamu nods and lets Atsumu continue. He's an asshole. Atsumu begins letting out a small desperate laugh. A selfish prick who thinks he can handle everything by himself. I know another one of those, Osamu says with a wry smile. His comment lightens the mood, and elicits a chuckle from Atsumu, though it's a mixture of laughter and sorrow. His eyes feel hot, but he smiles at Osamu's attempt to ease the tension. Shut up, scrub, Atsumu teases, and Osamu smiles back, sitting down next to him and nudging their shoulders together. He helped you find me? Osamu asks, curiosity laced in his tone. Atsumu nods, yet he starts and stares at his fidgeting fingers. Above all, he helped me not to go insane while looking for you. Osamu tilts the back of his head against the wall of the kitchen counter and stares at the ceiling. Guess you must have given him a hard time then. It's not like he was any better. Osamu glances at him out of the corner of his eye, reading the layers of emotions beneath the surface. He continues to ease Atsumu's tension with his quipping questions. So, he was kinda yeah knight in shining armor. Then, Osamu teases, a smirk playing on his lips. Atsumu scoffs, his smile fading as thoughts of Kayumi take over again. He doesn't respond to Osamu's jest, the weight of the past week crashing down on him, wrenching and crushing his heart. Osamu, ever perceptive, nudges his brother lightly. Oi, don't go spiraling on me now. You're back. I'm back. And the world's still turning. Alright, if you only knew. Atsumu lets out a shaky breath, grateful for Osamu's attempts to keep the atmosphere light. He needs this, especially now, but it's only a matter of time before things turn sour. Yeah, Atsumu mumbles, forcing a small smile. You know, yeah, not the easiest person to deal with either. Osamu chuckles, guess even the biggest jerks can find love. Huh? Atsumu's smile fades, his mind wandering back to Kayumi. Love, is that even something he deserves? Osamu glances at him again, noticing the shift in his brother's mood. Sensing Atsumu's struggle, he takes a more serious tone. Have you been with him the past week? He asks, his eyes searching Atsumu's face for confirmation. Atsumu nods weakly, his voice barely above a whisper. Yeah. He knits his brows together, his stomach churns. He saved me and took care of me. There's another stab in Atsumu's heart. A twist. It's bleeding. It will pass. Atsumu squeezes his eyes shut. I love you, Kayumi. It will pass. You'll be fine, Kayumi murmurs. Atsumu stands up abruptly, finding it incredibly hard to breathe. He circles the counter they always eat on and grabs the edge of it on the other side, hunching over and taking deep, heavy breaths. His chest tightens, his hands tremble, each inhale feels like knives cutting through his throat. Osamu stands up immediately as well, his worried eyes never leaving his twin. Tsumu? He asks anxiously, taking a tentative step towards his brother. He wants to touch him, but Atsumu flinches away, turning to him with wide, frightened eyes. Atsumu trembles, his breaths rapid and shallow, then blurts out, I used to work with Yakuza. The words tumble out of his mouth as he struggles to regain control. Osamu's expression contorts with confusion. He mumbles a quiet what, because he doesn't understand what his brother is trying to tell him. Atsumu continues, his voice shaky. After I left Inarizaki, I teamed up with Toru. He promised to help me find you if I helped him try to get 𝒒𝒑𝒔 back. Osamu frowns, processing what his brother has just revealed, but Atsumu isn't done yet. I'm not allowed to go to Tokyo because I messed with the Kumicho of the Ŝweden-Adler. Tendo is his right-hand man, and he and Terushima tried to kill me when I was there. Osamu's face pales again, his eyes widen, shock and concern etched on his face. Atsumu turns his gaze away from him. He can't bring himself to look at his brother. They might have been successful if Atsumu falls silent. If Atsumu tries again and sighs, he shifts his gaze back into Osamu's eyes, his vision blurred by unshed tears. They would have done it if Sakusa hadn't saved me. I was unconscious for a few days. He took care of me and made sure I was alright before he left. Atsumu squeezes his eyes shut, the weight of his confessions and the haunting memories threatening to overwhelm him. He wraps his arms around himself for support. The room seems to spin. Osamu stands frozen, watching his twin brother unravel before him. Atsumu can only guess what this confession must feel like. A torrential downpour, and Osamu must be struggling to find shelter within himself, like he's floating in a storm of revelations, each word from Atsumu landing like a lightning strike. Osamu hates Yakuza after all, especially after everything that has happened. Now, Atsumu tells him he's teamed up with their enemy, and it leaves Osamu utterly bewildered. Inside him, there must be chaos. The gears of comprehension grind against each other, resistance building with every revelation. It's as if Osamu is juggling the past and present, the brother he knows and the stranger in front of him. Confusion morphs into anger. Anger seeps into his blood, forming a tumultuous storm within his chest. He's mad. Fuck. He is so mad. Is Sakusa also part of the Yakuza? Osamu forces the question through gritted teeth, his voice resembling a low growl. His eyes narrow with suspicion. His gaze is averted from his brother. Atsumu nods, although Osamu doesn't see him. Yeah. He then breathes. The room feels stifling. He's part of Ikoa's team. Atsumu can see Osamu's blood boiling, the heat radiating off him as his mind races through the implications. Their mother was condemned by fate to get involved with one of Yakuza. Osamu was kidnapped and tortured by those bastards. Now, Atsumu, like their mother, is naive and willing enough to get involved with them, after everything they've been through. Before Osamu can unleash his fury, Atsumu reveals the full truth. He was one of Itachiama's assassins before he was part of Ikoa's Yakuza. Osamu's frown deepens, his eyes narrowing further. Then, Atsumu drops the bomb. He's Komori's partner. Ah, yes. Osamu's gaze snaps up, horror written all over his face. Atsumu can see the pieces falling into place, the revelation hitting him like a tidal wave, and Osamu is left standing on shaky ground. Komori, the mark that divided them. Komori, the mark that changed her whole life. You're shitting me. Osamu mutters, his gaze fixed on his brother. Atsumu shakes his head, his chest tightening with anxiety as he watches his twin's reaction. Osamu clenches his jaw. His eyes are wide open. For a moment, he says nothing and just lets the words sink into his bones. Then he swallows thickly and turns away, taking a deep breath as he steps away from Atsumu. Oh, not good, Samu. Spit me in the face, and that would be less disrespectful than the shit you're telling me right now. Samu. Atsumu tries again, but his brother is furious. He's glaring daggers into Atsumu, drowning, burning, and suffocating him, all at the very same time. Atsumu fucked up. Out of all people, you decide to fall for fucking Yakuza. For that one person that shot you down and was the cause of this mess. He's not responsible for. So what if he is? Osamu yells and Atsumu flinches, staring at the floor like some reprimanded child. If he's Komori's partner, he's hardly gonna be our ally. Is he? Or did I miss something? You wanna tell me he'd choose you, us, over his partner? Are you seriously that naive? Atsumu presses his trembling lips together and blinks away his tears, though new ones keep coming and coming and coming and, I didn't want this. Atsumu mumbles desperately. I didn't know that. You didn't know? Osamu scoffs. His voice is biting. He looks at his brother condemningly. You're telling me you didn't know he was part of Yakuza? You're telling me you didn't know what you signed up for the moment you joined them? Atsumu, what the actual fuck? He stares at Atsumu, waiting for an explanation that might somehow justify the unfathomable situation his brother has placed them in. Atsumu remains silent, unable to look Osamu in the eyes. The absence of an answer is enough for Osamu, and his eyes narrow further in a mix of anger and betrayal. You've always been impulsive, Atsumu, but this shit is beyond reckless. You involve yourself with Yakuza, and then you decide to fall for one of them like they're not some bastards waiting to stab you in the back. Atsumu's eyes plead for understanding, but Osamu's gaze sharpens. Thousands of knives pierce his heart. Yeah, just like Ma, Aunt Cha. And what next? You gonna let yourself get killed? And it's then when it comes crashing down. Atsumu's hurt feelings intensify, his heart sinking as if dragged by an invisible force. It feels like it's tearing apart, a hole forming in his chest. He feels awful, each word from Osamu acting like a blade, cutting deeper into his already wounded soul. Then, a silent, small tear slips down his cheek, and only now does Osamu realize what's been going on these past few days, weeks, months. It clicks. Immediately, he approaches Atsumu, his anger subsiding into a mixture of concern and regret. He pulls his twin into a tight hug and Atsumu immediately claws at the back of Osamu's shirt, pressing him closer. It's a silent acknowledgement of the pain they are both feeling, a reassurance that he's not going to let his brother down. Yeradumbus. Atsumu. Osamu mumbles into the crook of Atsumu's neck, his voice softening, squeezing Atsumu tighter. Atsumu holds onto his brother for dear life, his whole body shaking. Osamu doesn't let go of him either, a steady presence that helps both of them find a momentary anchor. Silent tears slip down Atsumu's cheeks and drop onto Osamu's shoulder. His brows are knitted together. Atsumu feels weak, defeated. Osamu keeps him in the embrace, offering a silent comfort that speaks volumes. He may be upset, but he also sees how Atsumu is suffering, how he has been suffering for the past few months and has tried to hide it because he wanted to be there for his brother. Atsumu will always be someone who puts his own needs aside if it means he can help others. But in the end, it will break him, won't it? Maybe now it's Osamu's turn to be there for his brother. He pulls back slightly and cups Atsumu's cheeks, wiping his tears away and gazing at him with a mix of tenderness and firmness. I'm sorry, he whispers, but Atsumu shakes his head, his voice choked with emotion as he tries to speak. No, Samu, I should be the one. Shush. Osamu cuts him off gently. His hands are warm on Atsumu's skin. Atsumu stares at him with red-rimmed eyes, locking onto Osamu's unwavering gaze. You should have told me sooner. Osamu's voice is soft, and Atsumu nods. It's almost imperceptible, an acknowledgement of a truth too long buried. I know. I'm sorry, Samu. No. Osamu shakes his head. At that moment, the weight of understanding hangs between them, and Osamu wraps Atsumu in another tight embrace. The hug is more than a physical gesture. It's a lifeline thrown to a brother drowning in regret. Atsumu reciprocates, his arms clinging to Osamu, seeking solace in the familiar warmth of their bond. His eyebrows knit together, caught between the ache of remorse and the relief of Osamu's acceptance. Just cut the lone wolf bullshit. Atsumu, let me in. Finally, Osamu's words are a plea and a demand, laced with a brotherly concern that cuts through the layers of guilt. Atsumu nods, his tears flowing freely now, and he buries his face in Osamu's shoulder, surrendering to the comforting hold. Osamu's steady embrace acts as a shield against the storm of emotions ravaging Atsumu's heart. Shivers rack Atsumu's frame, but Osamu is holding him, so it's okay. He's not alone. Yeah. Atsumu whispers, his voice muffled against Osamu's shirt, the vulnerability laid bare. Osamu tightens his grip, A silent promise to stand by Atsumu's side. Their connection reaffirmed in the gentle cadence of each heartbeat. Atsumu doesn't know what the next few days and weeks will bring. He has no idea whether he can survive a life without Kayumi, but he knows that he doesn't have to go through it alone. He has his brother and Rin, who will remind him over and over again that he's not alone, that they're always going to be there for him. Every loss brings a gain and Atsumu has already sacrificed a lot. When does his time to win come? No more lone wolf bullshit. He murmurs and squeezes Osamu tighter.